Welcome to Literary and Jury Charge Practice. Let's get started with this jury charge. And the subject of the jury charge is admission of evidence. Ready? But where the conspirator's statement is so bad to another against whom it is inadmissible, as is true in this case, the difficulty of introducing it against the declarant without inevitable harm to a co-conspirator, the petitioner in this case is no justification for causing such harm. The government should not have the windfall of having the jury be influenced by evidence against a defendant which, as a matter of law, they should not consider, but which they cannot put out of their minds. After all, the prosecution could use the confession against the confessor and at the same time avoid such weighty unfairness against a defendant who cannot be charged with the declaration by not trying all the co-conspirators in a single trial. It is no answer to suggest that here the petitioner defendant's guilt is amply demonstrated by the uninfected testimony against him. That is the best of reasons for trying him, freed from the inevitable unfairness of being affected by testimony not admissible against him. In any event, it is not for an appellate tribunal to know how the jury's mind would have operated if powerfully improper evidence had not, in effect, been put in the scale against petitioner. All right, let's look at some of the words in here. We had declarant, inevitable, inevitable harm, co-conspirator, windfall, weighty unfairness, weighty unfairness, uninfected testimony, uninfected testimony, inevitable unfairness, inevitable unfairness. All right, definitely some challenging words, good words to practice. All right, let's practice some literary material. Ready? Remembering school experiences, Vesta said the worst was the claim, the charm course they were required to take. She explains the instructor must not have liked me at all because she was constantly using me as an example in front of the class. However, I will say that I did learn how to stand, walk, eat fried chicken with a knife and fork, and not wear yellow things that at 19 years old I hadn't mastered yet. Evidently, her teacher thought yellow looked bad on Vesta, not that it was objectionable in court. It's funny how things like that stick with you after 43 years, Vesta said. Even though I consider it was just her opinion, I have never worn that shade of yellow again. She also remembers that she and Sue used ends of steno paper that a friend gave them for practicing and stored them in the windowsill of that studio apartment. You can already guess the end of the story. We opened the window one morning for a nice breeze while we went to school, Vesta said, and came home to an apartment full of blown steno paper everywhere. All of these women have achieved success in their field, and all say it was a combination of hard work and help from others. Mary Kay praised Agrin, who was the best teacher, who always kept us on task and was our biggest cheerleader. She also said she herself has always given 110% to the profession. I still love my career after 40 years and can't imagine doing anything else with my life. Miranda attributes her success to her mom. She showed me how great the field is, starting from when I was a very little girl, she said. She also showed a good work ethic, which I believe is what has driven me up the ladder in my courthouse in such a short period of time. If you work hard, everything else will fall into place. And Deanne said her success comes from my family and my stubbornness and determination. She and husband Jack have kids that are mine, his, and ours. 3 daughters and now 6 grandchildren. She said she spends most of her free time with family and, as the youngest of 7 herself, hosts Christmas every year for 50. Vesta said she constantly promotes the field to witnesses, asking them to tell their children about it. I have always said court reporting is like getting a free education, she said. You learn a little bit about varied subjects. Where else can you get that kind of education and get paid for it? All right, back to some jury charge practice. The subject of this jury charge is negligence. Ready? One of the questions you have to decide in this case is whether or not the defendant exercised that degree of care that is to be expected from a person of ordinary prudence under the same or similar circumstances. The proprietor of a store or similar place of business owes it to his customers to keep the premises reasonably safe. I think the evidence shows that the defendant exercised ordinary care in the lighting of the stairway and basement, that both were well lighted when the plaintiff descended the stairs, and that the steps were clearly visible to any person of ordinary eyesight, descending the stairway and the 2 steps from the platform. The plaintiff reached the platform at the foot of the first flight of stairs in safety. There were 2 steps left before reaching the floor. Ordinarily, a flight of 2 steps does not require a handrail, but the plaintiff claims she thought she had reached the floor and fell as she stepped off the platform. There is no claim of any defect in this stairway, unless it be the lack of a handrail. The lights were on, and the remaining steps were well lighted. Negligence is the gist of this action, and the burden of proving negligence on defendant's part rests upon the plaintiff to prove by the preponderance of the evidence that the defendant was negligent in the manner claimed by the plaintiff, and that such negligence was the proximate cause of the accident and the injuries sustained. By proximate cause is meant the direct or immediate cause of the accident. All right, now let's practice this legal opinion. And this was originally read at 230 words per minute in a speed contest. So let's finish up this legal opinion. Ready? The defendant moved to dismiss the indictment, arguing the state had not proven that he committed any illegal act other than driving left of center because his blood alcohol level did not indicate he was under the influence of alcohol. The court further instructed the jury, one who suffers from an as yet undiagnosed disease or defect cannot be convicted of involuntary manslaughter for a death resulting from his operation of an automobile unless the state proves beyond a reasonable doubt that 1. The driver knew or should reasonably have known of the existence of his physical or mental condition, disease, or defect, and 2. The driver should reasonably have foreseen that his condition, disease, or defect would impair his ability to drive an automobile to such a degree so as to endanger human life, and 3. His decision to drive an automobile at the date and time and in the place set forth in the indictment was negligence so gross, wanton, and culpable as to show a reckless disregard of human life. Right. We'll get back now to this literary material. It's called I'm a Court Reporter and I Play One on TV. Ready? The set is a crazy moving puzzle that never stops, said Linder. The crew is the hardest working set of people I have ever seen. It was almost like synchronized chaos. Linder was on set for about 23 hours over the course of 2 days, but out of that time, I was probably in the courtroom for a total of an hour tops while they were taping, she said. It is unreal how many times they shoot one scene. Each shot was done at different angles with lighting and camera adjustments. After watching what they were filming, I realized that this courtroom scene is probably not going to last very long when it comes to final edit on the TV show, said Linder. Sibo had a similar experience. I was on set pretty much the entire time. If you've seen a State of the Union address, you may have noticed that the court reporter sits prominently in the front, so I was in every take, she said. When Kevin Spacey, who plays Frank Underwood, came in, Sibo explained, we did the first take, and he was spot on perfection. I was thinking, wow, we are already done in one take. Boy, that goes to show you how little I knew about filming. We ended up doing about 35 takes. Sibo also noted that because the house floor on set had only 6 to 8 rows with extras standing in for the audience, it took several takes to replicate the 435 seats on the floor. She added, however, that the set was a striking resemblance to the real thing. I felt like I was back at the House of Representatives, going to work every day, she said. And there was a familiar face among the extras. Turns out my friend got called to be an extra too on the same day I was there shooting. She played a congresswoman in the audience, said Sibo. All right, let's continue on with some jury charge. The subject is negligence. Ready? The plaintiff, like the defendant, was required to exercise ordinary care under the circumstances, and if the plaintiff herself was guilty of negligence, which was a substantial factor or material element in causing the accident, then the plaintiff cannot recover in this case. The burden of proof rests upon the defendant to prove by the preponderance of the evidence that the plaintiff was negligent and that her negligence caused or contributed to cause the accident. If the defendant was negligent, then his negligence consisted of failing to warn the plaintiff of the remaining 2 steps after reaching the platform, or in failing to have a continuous handrail so as to include the 2 lower steps. But no one has the right to proceed blindly, unmindful of his or her surroundings. Each of us must exercise ordinary care for our own safety. It is for you to say whether or not the defendant was negligent in not warning the plaintiff of the 2 remaining steps or in failing to extend the handrail to the floor. You have the right to consider plaintiff's age and physical condition in passing upon that question. Did the clerk who went down the stairs with her know of any infirmity on her part? You will also consider whether the plaintiff herself was negligent and whether her negligence caused or substantially contributed to cause the accident. It is for you to say which one of them was negligent or whether both of them were negligent. And that will conclude our literary and jury charge practice.